This is the Financially Simple Podcast, the show dedicated to destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner. The content in the show is for informational purposes only. This show is not investment advice. Instead, seek help from a competent financial advisor or conduct your own due diligence. Justin Goodbread, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Heritage Investors, a registered investment advisor only conducting business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Here's your host, pizza-loving, certified financial planner, Justin Goodbread.
And welcome back to Financially Simple. I'm your host, Justin Goodbread. And today we're going to continue our deep dive into the discussion of personal finances for business owners. And specifically, we're dealing with cash flow. Now, I've been talking about income on how we get paid as business owners. I'm dealing with this topic today that I'm noticing is coming more in my purview the older I get in this financial planning world. The topic is, how do I take income from my retirement accounts if I retire before age 59 and a half without paying the 10% penalty? That's a mouthful. Let me say it again. How do you, the business owner, take income from your retirement accounts if you retire before 59 and a half without paying the 10% penalty? Now, I mentioned I'm dealing with this a lot more. Perhaps it's the generation that I work with, 40, 50, and 60-year-olds are saving more than some of the 70 and 80-year-olds that I work with. Maybe they have more assets and they're retiring. Maybe it's as business owners, we've learned that we have to prepare more for our future. We can't sit back on our laurels and expect that somebody's going to come in and buy our business from us. Maybe that's what we're dealing with. Nonetheless, as a planner, I'm constantly having to navigate the income situation. How are we going to get paid? And we've talked about a number of different ways, but how are we going to get paid throughout this life? There may be a point in your life where you have reached pinnacle. You have reached the point to where you are now going to retire. I'm actually working with probably a half dozen or so, maybe even close to a dozen clients who are going to retire before 59 and a half. And part of the planning we have to deal with is how are we going to get income? One of the areas that we can pull income from is retirement accounts. Now, I realize that when you sell your business, that there will be a non-qualified asset. In other words, money that's in your name or you're in your spouse's name that's not in a retirement type of account. I realize that. But nonetheless, there often is a benefit to taking money from retirement accounts or doing a blended distribution when you retire. So I had this conversation the other day before I went on vacation. I got to tell you guys, I'm just back from the beach. If you're watching us on YouTube, you notice my tan is probably matching the backdrop behind me here. My dark tan's coming in. I had a blast on the beach. I needed it. I needed to get away. We went down to the Gulf of Florida. My family and I, my mother and father-in-law came with us for a couple of days, and it was just me and Emily and the three munchkins. We had a blast. We went fishing one day. We saw sharks. We dug sandcastles. If you name it, we did it. It was a blast to get away. But before I went on vacation, I had a time with a client who is retiring sooner than later. They are going to retire before 59 and a half. And we are strategizing as planners on how to best pay them. Should we take all the money from the proceeds that is coming from the sale of their business? Should we use money from their rental properties? Possibly. We're going to talk about rental properties in the near future. Should we take money from their retirement accounts? Or maybe is it a combination of all three? So I put together a couple points here that I want to walk through and explain the strategies that we can utilize as planners or that you can utilize as a business owner for creating that lifetime income that you ultimately are looking for if, in fact, you actually retire before 59 and a half. Now, why do I say 59 and a half? Well, there's a rule. The rule is if you take money from your retirement accounts before 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty. It's an early distribution penalty. It's an early withdrawal penalty that you're going to pay from taking distributions from your IRAs or your retirement accounts before 59 and a half. But there's a way to get money out of the account. There's ways to get money out of your retirement accounts before 59 and a half without paying that 10% penalty. And that's what I want to explore today, because one or maybe some of these concepts might help you maximize your income to yourself throughout the remainder of your life. So let's go through these in detail. So the first one is we're going to deal with IRAs for a little bit, individual retirement accounts. These are typically pre-taxed dollars. I'm going to make that assumption today that we're not dealing with post-tax dollars, but maybe I should add that as number one. If you have money in a post-tax IRA, then you could potentially take some of that money out. Now it's going to have a certain calculation on it. It gets into a nightmare, but I'm dealing with pre-tax dollars here. Okay. So let's deal with number one here. The first thing you can do is you can make distributions or withdrawals from your IRA for medical expenses. And I'm going to give you the high level overview of these today. For example, medical expenses. If your IRA distributions are used to pay medical expenses, and here's the key, that are not reimbursed by the health insurance company. So if you have health insurance in place, you run into some expenses. Maybe this is your deductible. Maybe this is your co-insurance amount. If the health insurance does not reimburse you for these expenses, and so here's some of the keys, and it exceeds 10% of your adjusted gross income, it's not subject to the early withdrawal penalty. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. But nonetheless, you can take money out of your IRA for medical expenses if it's not reimbursed by your health insurance and it exceeds 10% of your adjusted gross income. If that's the case, then it's not subject to your early withdrawal penalty. So that's the first way you can get money out of your IRA pre-59.5. Again, we're trying to save 10% tax on this. This is all we're doing. If you take money out for medical expenses, you're going to get away from that 10% withdrawal penalty. However, you're still going to pay ordinary income tax on it. So let's keep that in mind. Along the same lines with health is the second way is you can pay for health insurance premiums by using IRA dollars. Now, there's some catches here. Here we go. If you lose your job, that sounds interesting, and collect unemployment compensation for 12 consecutive weeks. Okay, so there's a couple of qualifiers here. If you lose your job, maybe you're the business owner and your spouse loses their job, but somebody loses their job and you collect unemployment compensation for 12 consecutive weeks, you can now take IRA money to pay for your health insurance for you, your spouse, and or your dependents. Okay. Now, here's another catch on that. In order to do this, you have to qualify for it and take the distribution in the year in which the unemployment compensation came to you. All right. So there's a little qualifier there, but nonetheless, I have seen this actually come into play that you can take money out of your IRA without the 10% penalty on it. If you lose your job and collect unemployment compensation for 12 consecutive weeks, you can get money out of the IRA without the 10% penalty. All right. So those are two little rules inside the Internal Revenue Code that allows us to play some money. Here's the third one. Now, this one's not that unpopular, if I can speak correct. Man, this might have got too much sun to my head while I was down there. You can withdraw money from your IRA penalty free. Again, we're trying to get away from that 10% penalty for your first time home purchase. You're like, Justin, I'm retiring. Yeah, but I've met individuals who've never owned a home. And all of a sudden they do retire. They've been commuting in a big city and now they want to move down to the beach, perhaps where I was, and they want to buy their first time home in their retirement. You can do that. You can withdraw up to $10,000 if you're single, $20,000 if you're married from your IRA to buy or build your first time home. So that's pretty interesting there, that you can use your IRA money penalty free to build or buy your first time home. The number four, I see a lot. In fact, I probably have a handful, maybe a dozen clients who fit this particular criteria. If you become disabled, I have a fair amount of clients who became disabled before age 60. And if you become disabled, and here's your qualifier, you have a physician which signs off on the severity of your condition. In other words, you cannot work, and the physician signs off on it, you can take money out of your IRA penalty free. You're not going to pay the 10% penalty if you're disabled. Now, this will be my last IRA point, and that's a calculation called 72T. 72, like the T, letter T, Tom. And what that stands for, a particular section of the Internal Revenue Code. And basically it says that if IRAs are taken as an annuity payment, they're not subject to an early withdrawal penalties. I can get into all the different calculations. Basically, it means you have to take a annuity payment over your life, a calculation over your life. You actually have to have an actuary run what this calculation should be. You have to take it for at least 5 years, or that's actually the greater of 5 years or 59.5. So let's say you're 58, then you have to take it for 5 years. Let's say you're 40, then you have to take the income until you're 59.5. So it's called 72T. I'm going to put a little bit better description for 72T in the blog post on financiallysimple.com. For audio, it's very hard to try to explain this particular concept, but here's the gist of it, is that I can design an annuity payment out of an IRA with an actuary that allows us to take substantial equal payments is the term that's used, substantial equal payments for a period of time without having to pay the 10% penalty. I've used that technique probably a dozen times in my career, almost 20 years in the planning world. I've used that probably a dozen times with people who retire early and we're trying to figure out how to blend their income to make their assets last the longest for them in their life. So 72T is the calculation that's used. It's basically just an annuity payment you can do with your IRA.
You're listening to the Financially Simple Podcast. Show your support by subscribing to this and our other educational business channels at financiallysimple.com.
Now, we're going to get out of IRAs for a little bit. And let's say that you have a 401k at work. Let's say you have a 401k. You can leave your money in your 401k. Workers who leave their jobs in the year that they turn 55 or older can withdraw money out of their 401k without having to pay the 10% penalty. So a little different than the IRA. IRA, if you put the money into the IRA, you have to wait until you're 59 and a half. On a 401k and you retire, and let's say you keep X number of dollars in your company's 401k plan, you can now take money out of that 401k without having to pay the 10% penalty. Remember, though, if you roll it over to an IRA, you're now going to have to push it out at 59 and a half. While we're on your 401k, another not so common technique that you can use is to take a loan from your 401k. I actually used this with a client one time. They retired. It was 58 years old. They only had a year. We needed a little bit of money. So we actually went in and borrowed money out of the 401k through a loan provision on their work 401k. They didn't pay any tax on it at that particular time. Instead, we waited till we rolled over the 401k at 59 and a half, and then they paid the taxes on that rollover. But you can take a loan from your 401k. Now remember, loan provisions qualify for up to 50% of your account balance up to $50,000. So you have an account at work that has $100,000 in it or $200,000, you can take $50,000 out via a loan. If you have $20,000, you're only going to be able to get $10,000 out of that 401k. So those are the 401k side of things. Now, I'm starting to see this a lot more, and that's the inherited IRA. Let's say that your parents or your aunt or your uncle passed away and they left you an inheritance, and it was an IRA they left you. And if you receive that before 59 and a half, you can take the money out of that inherited IRA penalty free. Now, you're going to have to pay income tax on it, but you're not going to pay a 10% early distribution penalty on an inherited IRA. Are you confused yet? This is where the planner world comes in together, because I've actually had clients that had inherited IRAs. They had Roth IRAs. They had 401ks. They have IRAs, and they had non-qualified monies. We're trying to figure out how to maximize the income to them. You can use a little bit of all these different techniques, blend it together, and get an unbelievable tax benefit or long-term planning benefit. And I mentioned Roth in there. Let's go to number 9, Roth IRAs. This is last. Roth IRAs are my favorite. Remember, you put the money in there after tax, and the money grows tax-free as long as you keep it eligible, as long as you invest it properly. One of the things you can do with a Roth IRA, and I've spoken about this in the past, is you can pull your contributions out of the Roth IRA tax-free and penalty-free. I love it. It's beautiful. You can't take your earnings out before 59 and a half. Or actually 5 years. The earnings have to be in there for 5 years, but you can't take your earnings out. But if you're pre-59 and a half, you can actually go in and take your contributions out. So let's think about this. Currently, we can put $6,000 if you're under the age of 50 in a Roth IRA. If you're over the age of 50, you can do $7,000. Let's just keep it simple. Let's say we did $6,000 for 20 years. That's $120,000. Now all of a sudden you're 55 years old. You've been putting this money back and you want to retire. Well, now we can go in and we've had our money growing. It's been growing tax-free in this Roth IRA for all these years. Now we can go in and start taking contributions out for a couple of years. You may be able to blend it with your 401k at work. You may be able to blend it with that inherited IRA. You can blend it a number of different ways. Ultimately, friends, if you plan your income properly today, so I'm 40 years old. 59 and a half is 19 years away. Good job, Justin. You know math. Yeah. 19 and a half years from now, I'll be, quote, eligible to take money out of my retirement accounts tax-free. But if I go ahead and think with a little bit of planning, and this is where a financial planner for business owners is different. If I can plan how my income is going to be as a business owner in 19 years, and I know potentially I could sell my business. I know potentially I'm investing in other alternative assets that are royalty-based or interest-based income to me. I do have Roth IRAs. I do have IRAs. I do have actually, I don't have any IRAs now. Converted them all. So I do have Roth IRAs. I do have 401ks. In my 401ks, I have pre-tax and post-tax dollars. I have both 401k Roth and 401k traditional. I have an inherited IRA. I got a little bit of everything that you could think of. If I plan this out right, and as part of my projection planning, I now could theoretically retire at age 45, 50, 55, and do a blended distribution from all my various accounts so that my monies are growing tax sensitive for me. I could let my tax-free dollars grow in the years when taxes are really high. I could let my tax-deferred dollars, I could pull them out when the years when my taxes are very low. Start taking monies out. So I put all this together to say that you can take monies out of your retirement account before age 59 and a half without penalties. How do you do it? We just went through them. There's 9 different ways. You can pull money out of your IRAs for medical expenses. You can pull money out of your IRAs for health insurance. You can pull money out of your IRAs for purchase of first home. You can actually pull money out of your IRAs, by the way, for college if you wanted to. Maybe you want to go back to school after you just retire. You can do that. That's another way that I could put this inside here for us as a number 10, so to speak. I don't know why I didn't have it on my list. I just thought of that offhand. If you're disabled, you can pull money out of your IRAs or 401ks for that matter. If you have IRA money, you can use the calculation 72T, which basically moves your money into an annuity payment. If you're 401k and you have over the age of 55, you can take money from your 401k without that 10% penalty. You can take a loan from your 401k. You could take an inherited IRA and you could use your contributions, not your earnings, but your contributions to your Roth IRA. So I just gave you 10. I added another one in there about you can pay for secondary education out of your IRA. It's a qualified expense. So there's 10 different ways that you can take money out of your accounts without that 10% penalty. Okay. You say, well, Justin, I want to buy a house. I want to buy an investment property. I need to take the money out. Hey, we're going to talk about that when we get to investments here in a couple of weeks, about how you don't have to take money out to buy rental properties, et cetera, with your IRAs. So there's a number of things we can do here. But for right now, I want to leave with those 10 things. Hey, look, the book is out. I actually held it. If you follow me anywhere on our Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, any of our social media, YouTube channel is rocking. I'm actually kicking our competitors' tails. We're having so much fun on it. We're doing an awesome job on getting the message out, but perhaps you want to order a copy of the book. Let me tell you, you can go to Financially Simple /book, and you can go ahead and pre-order it. It's going to be available for general public, be distributed on June the 20th. Amazon is finalizing the setup. I got to tell you, it's pretty cool. I held 3 copies of it in my hand. I sent the very first copy to my mother. Wish my dad was here, but I sent the very first copy to my mother. Our team has a copy of it, and then my business partner has a copy of it. So I'm excited about the book. I can't wait for you to read it and see what it's like to change your future. Look, we can change our future. I'm trying to help us all understand this world of finance because life is hard. It is. Life is good and life can be frustrating. Man, money, business, this doesn't have to be. Let's continue to make our lives at least financially simple. You guys go out and make it a great day.
You've been listening to the Financially Simple podcast. For more business and personal financial help and information, head over to financiallysimple.com today.